on the most important issue probably for the European continent. That is about global competitiveness. And we are going to discuss this with very prominent speakers. You all have the program, but we will, of course, come back to them. First of all, for introductory remarks, the floor is TÜSİAD's Vice President, Mr. Can Yücaoğlu.
Thank you, Bahadır. Esteemed participants of our panel, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, I would like to welcome you all on behalf of TÜSİAD board to our webinar. At TÜSİAD, we are very excited to see Mr. Draghi, a member of the European establishment, start the debate on European competitiveness. This is the topic that has the single largest impact potential in determining the future in our region. In this light, today we will explore EU's strategic focus on competitiveness in view of the Draghi report and how Turkey can contribute to this goal. It's both a privilege and a pleasure to join all of you. We are grateful to our distinguished panelists for their participation. Their insights will enrich the discussion and deepen our understanding on how to collectively drive innovation, productivity, and sustainability in alignment with the EU and broader European competitiveness. Mr. Draghi rang the alarm bells and emphasized that the EU needs to cautiously steer the key priorities of growth fueled by innovation, decarbonization, and economic security while navigating the trade-offs. The Turkish business community closely observes the eroding European competitiveness and intensifying trade tensions, recognizing that our challenges are interconnected and our economies are deeply intertwined. Given the geopolitical and economic complexities that are well reflected upon in all the three recent strategic reports by Mr. Letta, Draghi, and Minister, a new approach to policy making at the European level is needed, including those addressing Turkey. This new policy addressing the open strategic autonomy and global competitiveness will have to include an increased economic integration with Turkey. The EU has already underscored this interest in enhanced cooperation in the joint communication by the European Commission and the High Representative dated November 2023. Today, decisive action is urgently needed to move this mission forward. Political preconditions for further economic integration between the EU and Turkey will not and have never made Europe more competitive, more secure, or more resilient. However, increasing integration with Turkey will have a positive contribution on all these goals. Today, we must double down on the EU-Turkey partnership, starting with the long overdue modernization of the customs union in line with green and digital policies. Value chain resilience, innovation cooperation, digital economy and data flows, cybersecurity, circular economy, energy, net zero industry partnerships, critical raw materials, green and digital technologies, and technological standards. These are just a few examples of what an enhanced economic integration partnership can cover, ultimately supporting de-risking and diversification strategies across key areas and advancing broader sustainability and competitiveness goals across Europe. Today, I look forward to exploring how Turkey's integration can contribute to Europe's competitiveness agenda. Our panelists will share with us their expertise on how Turkey and the EU can work together to enhance competitiveness. Thank you for joining our panel today. You're on mute, Bahadır.
The right way of, oh yeah, I think there is a delay in the, yeah. This is the right way. I think this is a great framework to explore today with our distinguished speakers. Minister Bozay will join us as soon as he's out of an ongoing meeting now at the ministry. But without waiting for him, I think we are ready to start talking about all that. Mr. Pim Lescrauwaet from the cabinet of Commissioner Dombrovskis is with us. He's an expert of the European financial and monetary policies, and also he worked for the surveillance of the member states. Therefore, I think we will also maybe have the opportunity to talk not only about the European Union as such, but also focusing on some of the countries, most important countries, consequential policies for Europe's global competitiveness. And then there is with us Luisa Santos, the Deputy Director General of Business Europe. She is one of the most prominent voices of the European business, and Business Europe, maybe before Draghi and Letta reports, was there to talk about all this, not only to talk about all this, but to formulate very tangible policies and action lines in strategic terms, but also in terms of really to-do lists in regulatory aspects, in the investment environment, and in all that. This is really interesting that we are also in a period of transition to a new, I don't know how to define this, new form, new identity, new adventure of transatlantic relationship, being once again, the most at the global level this time, consequential development for the next years to come. Interestingly, it will be Donald Trump, before even being inaugurated, who will represent the United States of America at the ceremony of the reopening of the Cathedral of Notre Dame next week in Paris. It was when he was president that was burnt down. Symbolically, while talking always Europe's capacity to rise from its ashes, and ashes are, of course, very symbolically. We are not yet there. There are no ashes. I don't want to, of course, say that there's that. But symbolically, of course, that this will be an important moment during the time when Germany is going towards elections and unidentified political power by next spring. France, once again, is trying to occupy the field of representing Europe together with all other countries, of course, but still, this is, we know why it is important. Why it is important. Now, in this first round, let's start with the Letta and Draghi reports. Not to summarize them, but they are already released. There has been lots of talks about them. Several webinars, articles, political speeches. Are they still important now that a new European Commission is taking office? And are they still an important recipe, or they are either forgotten because of political priorities and conformism, or they have to be already updated with the recent developments of the last weeks and the weeks to come? So the first question is there. Where are we with the impact of these reports on the European policy making? Starting with Mr. Lescrauwaet, please.
No, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm really happy to engage with you today. There are indeed a lot of relevant topics, as you mentioned, both, so this will be highly interesting. I, of course, have to apologize for my head of cabinet not being able to attend today. He's, of course, a bit more into the topic, but indeed we have been following it, also from the previous mandate. We will be also very much linked to these kind of issues in the new mandate, given also the title of our commissioner, which is about economy, productivity, simplification, implementation. So all the things actually that are relevant for the discussion today will remain also within the mandate of the new commissioner or the new portfolio. And as you said, indeed, all these things have been said before, longer ago, by business associations, by observers, analysts, more recently and very prominently by much esteemed Professors Draghi and also in the Letta report. So these are really wake-up calls for Europe, and I'm really happy to discuss this with this distinguished audience today. So to go a little bit more closely to the question, I think first a few elements of introduction perhaps. I would say that if you look back over the last couple of years, the EU economy has been on the one hand confronted with quite a number of massive shocks. We have seen that we have run into an increased fragmentation of the world economy, a more volatile or even hostile global environment. And given that the EU economy is an open economy, we're of course inherently more affected by that. We have seen, of course, being geographically close to Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, that we're also quite exposed to that economically, and in particular in relation to the energy blackmail by Putin. But in spite of these shocks, we have actually remained quite resilient in the EU. So that's the good news. But if we then look forward, we indeed see all these structural problems in terms of competitiveness, productivity. And then to reply to your question, are these analyses, are these reports, are these policy recommendations that have been made recently still valid? I would clearly say yes. It's actually very clear that the Draghi report, which the Commission had commissioned, will be at the core of the political priorities of the new college. The President has announced this. This is very visible in the, let's say, the mission letters of the various commissioners and vice presidents. So this will be at the very core of our policies for the years to come. And we actually believe that this will not only be relevant for the years to come, but also for the decades to come. So we will really address this head on. I would say that compared to a few weeks ago or a few months ago, these challenges and the required policies have even become more pressing or more valid. Let's say we have seen indeed the developments in the US, changes on the global scene, all move into the direction of this becoming more important. And then what will we do about this? So to give a bit of an idea of how we will structure our policy priorities, and this is actually indeed along these lines of what also had been identified in the Draghi report, meaning innovation, decarbonization, and security. And you may have noted that a week ago in the European Parliament, President von der Leyen has announced this competitiveness compass, which will basically build on these three important pillars. So that is clearly also confirmed as the three elements from the Draghi report that we will prioritize. I will just briefly go through each of them so that we have a bit of an overview of what is going to happen. So first on innovation, it is very clear, I think this is a very shared assessment, that in order to bring change to the economy, we need to boost investments in research and development. We need to have more innovation, especially in the digital economy, and we need to raise productivity. So all these things hang together. Today, we have been lagging behind, for instance, linked to the US in terms of R&D spending, where the EU spending is around 1 percentage point lower than in the US. And also China by now has a share of R&D spending, which is higher than in the EU. So this is clearly needing change. And in that, basically, what we also find important is not only the R&D per se, but also the possibilities for companies to scale up in Europe, to grow in Europe, and to become also globally competitive. And we can do that. We have actually the means. We have the largest single market in the world, and we need to exploit this more. So we will work to improve this single market in areas like services, energy, defense, electronic communications, digitalization, artificial intelligence. So there are clearly a number of elements where we can improve the single market and make better use of the EU scale. And a specific area which I didn't mention, but which is actually even more key, is the financial markets area. We will indeed push for this European Savings and Investment Union, because getting private funding, private capital, private investment where it is most productive will be key. Now we see a number of hurdles because there is a lot of savings in the EU, but it doesn't always reach the most productive investment. So to improve that through the capital markets, through the banking union, will be a priority, clearly. Another priority that we will have, so I mentioned single market, capital banking union. Another priority is the administrative burden on companies and simplifying the implementation of EU law, clearly also a priority, which will, if we make this happen, provide an important support for businesses and especially the smaller ones. And the smaller ones are important because those are the ones that are most innovative and can actually grow and hopefully then also compete and scale in Europe and also be relevant at the more global scale. So we will start doing this. There is a lot of work to be done on this simplification. We will try to start by the areas where the interest or the burden is the highest, but we will gradually cover many more fields. And this will actually be an effort that will require the support of the whole Commission, but also of other institutions, including the Parliament and the Council and the stakeholders. So that's a massive work. And then the second area about decarbonization, I think the first thing to say here is that this decarbonization objective, the ambitious goals of the European Green Deal, those remain a central focus. So we will not change this level of ambition, these goals, and we will continue pushing for this clean energy transition and supporting the green technologies. So our goals have not changed. What we will look at very carefully in the current mandate is how to best achieve this. So what is actually the best pathway to get to this carbon neutral economy, and what are the tools we need to make sure that this is compatible with Europe's prosperity, competitiveness for our companies and industries and also our people. So we will see how we can best help our businesses to navigate and thrive in this very complex transitions. And that's why, for instance, a key initiative for the first 100 days of the new mandate will be this Clean Industrial Deal. And there are a few key sectors come to mind, the energy sector, but also the car sector, where we will, and then the linked sectors, and also the technology, high-tech sectors, where we will have, of course, specific attention to see how we can marry these different objectives and strike the right balance. And then the third element of this three pillars of the compass or the competitiveness priorities is then economic security. There, the first thing to mention is that the EU has always been and will always remain an open economy. We have been benefiting a great deal from open trade. We need it, we need to preserve it, because the cost for Europe to close down would be quite large. So in that sense, we will continue to promote this rules-based multilateralism. We will continue to push for an effective WTO, implementing global trade rules that are fair and sustainable. So that's the one thing. On the other hand, we of course know that the world is increasingly shaped by fragmentation, by rivalries, for instance, in relation to technological advancement, sometimes weaponization of economic dependencies. So therefore, in the end, this line between economic efficiency and security has become thinner and has been more difficult to navigate. So there we will, of course, adjust our policies and need to develop and implement tools to protect our economy where necessary, when there are these kind of security concerns, and that we will see where this is essential. And we can see already a few areas where we need to de-risk or diversify or reduce dependencies, and that is especially in the areas we are most exposed in, such as the critical raw materials and technologies, and also in relation to security defense capability. So there's clearly a number of areas where the cursor is moving a little bit more into the direction of security, perhaps at a certain cost of economic efficiency, while, of course, making sure we stay a very open economy to the benefit of all. And in that context, of course, as you mentioned, there's a lot of things happening in the world.
Can we come back to those in the second round?
Sure. Okay, I will do that.
Because
I think
you really loaded us with important and so comprehensive program. So, but this is very important. Well, thank you very much at this point. And we are also welcoming, and we are very honored by the presence of Mr. Mehmet Kemal Bozay, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Ambassador Bozay is Turkey's Mr. Europe. He was also ambassador to Brussels, and he is Turkey's European face of Europe in Turkey. So, Minister, the floor is yours. And we know that you have a limited time, but please stay with us as long as you can. And then we will turn back to the voice of business, Luisa Santos. But Minister Bozay, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I joined you a bit late. The traffic in Ankara is awful. It's snowing, stop, but there was a jam. Anyway, I managed to catch the last 10 minutes without being on the screen. I'll take it from the previous left in a way. There are some complementary elements in comments, and I would mainly distinguish Kaleağası, dear Bahadır Bey, my recent experience, because I'm traveling a lot. I came from Athens this morning, and before that, I had some meetings with Greeks. Also, before that, 25 French ambassadors from the region, they gathered in Istanbul to have a reunion, and I was the keynote speaker. But it was not only one-way talk. They shared their views. And tomorrow I'm going to Germany to meet the State Secretary, because all of our, as I told you, that I will take it from where it was left, working on mainly security issues. But security issues is not only defense issues, but economic security. European economic security is the priority. And I believe this is very well identified and depicted in Draghi's report. And there, what I see from my experience, from my talks and exchange of views with different European colleagues, with different European from different European countries, there is the main concern is on uncertainty, because there is a big uncertainty around the world, especially after the US elections. What will be the policies of the US, and tariffs, trade wars are also main concerns. And there, I believe, and these concerns are getting together in so many areas. Draghi, in a way, Draghi reports as a follow-up of Neta's report, actually, on one market, warns all of us. And I say all of us, I include Turkey as well, though there was no reference to Turkey. It says that the king is naked and needs new dresses. So here, when we are having a new structuring, Turkey's role should be also in all calculations, especially when the report refers to creating industrial partnerships to secure the supply chain of key technologies, and also about EU needs to organize this neighborhood and beyond. You know, the general approach, the US would like to have growth and would like to have more control on the trade, and this will bring some kind of shrinking in the tariffs and all these measures, shrinking in the global economy. And regionalization will be more on the agenda. When the regionalization is more on agenda, we should notice our wider region. And when we take care of the wider region, there is a big country with 85 million population, part of the single market. And all these competitiveness efforts and creating industrial partnerships are related with Turkey. And then Turkey, as a candidate country, aligns closely with the EU's interest in fostering open trade and economic relations. Here, what I noticed, there were some also concerns from the Turkish private sector, how things will go with European Union when there will be those trade wars. However, when I'm talking about the industrial partnerships, yesterday I was in Istanbul with the Italian-Turkish Chamber of Commerce members. And what I see there, just give an example, the biggest, I mean, the number 3 factory of circular economy, refurbishing the furnitures or also recycling them, is a Turkish investment in Italy. And they are number 4 in the world. And also, I had discussions with the Turkish business people. They are participating to yesterday's dinner on Leonardo da Vinci Award dinner. They were very keen to increase their cooperation, and they also see all these, twilight zone environment as an opportunity for having also some connections with the EU based on sustainable financing mechanisms to mobilize sustainable and digital projects. And also Turkey's inclusion in the programs of the Global Green Bond Initiative of the European Investment Bank is a strategic importance for our business circles. And through these kind of instruments, private business can access blended financing models, reducing risk while entering high potential markets like clean energy and advanced manufacturing. And if we can streamline all these issues combined with the warnings in Draghi report, I believe that Turkey will be an important additional element. In a way, I take it as a vital element for the competitiveness of Europe in different markets. And our access to the other markets through connectivity is also something making Turkey more preferable than other parts of the region or also other parts of the globe. So I will again repeat what I said. For the economic security of Europe, we should calculate what will be the reflections of measures taken by the US in the form of tariffs, and what will be the outcome of this on the regionalization inside Europe, including Turkey, and how we can combine all these things, as the previous speaker mentioned, decarbonization. Because decarbonization will also necessitate the shorter supply chains, shorter value chains, because transportation is one of the main carbonizing elements. In this sense, Turkey's connectivity, Turkey's airport in Istanbul, the ports, seaports, and also railway transportation, which also part of the EU funds, EU projects that are funding Turkey's modernization of Turkey's railroad, are a good combination that we can benefit and collaborate on sustainable and secure areas in making investments. At the end of the thing, how we can combine our capacities to increase the resilience of Europe, because Turkey has half of its trade export with Europe. We are number 50, it sometimes changes, it's number 6, in trade, is a trade partner to EU. So here, I'm using Europe and EU interchangeably. Here we need to find new ways and to find new instruments to increase this cooperation in this twilight zone. We will observe it more and more in the coming days, because we are not in a sterilized environment. There are wars around us, and this also brings me to the defense security of Europe as well. And the only way, I don't want to mention any actor or any challenge that are all known by us. Here, when we talk about economic security of Europe, resilience is the keyword. For the defense security is deterrence. And in order to deter that might be endangering the European security, Turkey stands with its defense industry, stands with its army, stands as a NATO ally with many of the European countries. And here, one of the most important things, it's very interesting, economic security and defense security gets, they get connected in a way in one of the important areas on mobility, connectivity. And 3 years ago, there was a military exercise in Romania. In order to deter any rival against Europe's security, you should mobilize very fast. And in this military exercise, other European NATO countries participated in. Other European countries, which are NATO members and Brits, they mobilized their troops to a conflict zone, 5 to 7 days. The Turkish 1,350 soldiers were deployed there in 2 days, 48 hours. So when we look at the combination of economic security of Europe and the physical security, geopolitical security of Europe, Turkey has a role there. I'm not trying to just emphasize geopolitics and geopolitical importance of Turkey, because we do not want to be labeled by just being a partner on defense issues, while we are stretching the fronts by also being at the southern flank of Europe, especially what we are witnessing now in Syria, in Lebanon, Israel, and what's in Palestine. And then all these plans might fail if there will be another big flux of refugees, migrants to our borders, because our borders means European borders, as we witnessed in the past. So that the deterrence capacity of Turkey and resilience capacity of Turkey, they are both separately and in a combined way is a big asset that might be also important for future arrangements, whatever they can be, for in all calls of action in the Draghi report. And here, as a Turkish diplomat, of course, I promote my country. I'll ask dear colleagues and dear commission members to make their own reportings. What will be the added value of Turkey if we think, when we plan all these things that are cited in Draghi's report as actions, what will be the potential of Turkey if we add Turkey's capacity in order to collect this 800 billion euros for investment? And I believe that it will be a self-explanatory thing. This is why maybe with TÜSİAD, with Commission, with other Turkish institutions, like we did in the benefits of the report on the benefits of customs union, which was prepared by international organizations, we should also work on that, and all the things that I am speaking in general terms will end up with some numbers. Let's go through the numbers. I'm so self-confident as Turkey. These numbers will tell us, okay, we should really do something together with Turkey. Start customs union modernization, start more communication, and to have also more projects on green and digital transformation. And we need to see this with our own eyes. However, I believe that we need some concrete reports based on academic studies, which are fortified with the needs of private sector of Europe, and also with our capacity. I believe that we will have, we firmly believe that Turkey's integration into EU will enhance the resilience and competitiveness of both parties in the rapidly changing global landscape. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Minister Bozay. Not only you have a strategic vision, but also you are talking the language of business. You have business plans for the relations. So thank you very much. So Luisa Santos, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and thanks again to TÜSİAD for organizing this very timely discussion. So on the reports themselves, of course, we look at them very positively, both the latter report, the Draghi report afterwards, and the initial report as well. They are definitely complementary. I think if there is a key message that comes from all the reports is that Europe is lagging behind in terms of competitiveness as compared to the US and China in particular. And we need to speed up. We need to make sure that we level up the competitiveness and the economic growth in Europe. I think that is the main message, and that has been the message, of course, that Business Europe has been passing even before the reports. We've been constantly saying that economic growth is very important, and you cannot do the transition, so both the digital and the green transition, without economic growth. They demand a lot of investments. Companies need to be able to finance these investments. Of course, they will not do them alone, and that's why also the Capital Markets Union is very important. They will not do this alone, but it's definitely important that they are in a good situation to make sure that they do this, and while doing this, they remain competitive, which is not a very easy balance. So we are happy with the outcomes of the reports. Now the importance is to make sure that they are implemented. We are happy to see that many of the recommendations of the reports have been going to the political guidance of this commission, have been going to the mission letters. We understand President von der Leyen wants to set up a task force to implement the Draghi report. So it is important. We see the first steps. I think we saw one important step already very concretely. It's on one piece of legislation that business was complaining about, and that is deforestation. We were very happy to see the Commission coming up with a proposal to postpone the regulation entering into force for 1 year. This is very important. It shows that the Commission is listening, and is listening when business says there are problems in implementing this legislation. We are not questioning the legislation or the objectives, but we don't have the conditions to start implementing it as of the end of the year. So this is the first step. So now we need to see concretely how this will be implemented. Talking of numbers, and I don't want to go too much in numbers, but just to give you one, of course, the EU GDP growth in 2023 has been 0.5, in the US 3%, and in China 5%. Of course, we can question the China 5% always, but not the US. So the difference is quite staggering, and we don't expect this situation to be better this year. So we are lagging behind, especially with the US. I mean, we have lost consistently over the last year GDP growth as compared to the US. And we are also losing, and this is quite worrying for us, we are also losing attractiveness in terms of foreign investment. I mean, we have dropped, the FDI in Europe has dropped by 2/3, and more or less in the US has increased by 2/3. So we are also less attractive to foreign investors, and this is also very concerning. So what does business want and what we expect this commission to put in practice? I think the priorities we have are basically four, and this is what we have been campaigning during the elections with our Reboot Europe campaign, because we really think Europe needs to be rebooted, needs to be reset. Priority number one, affordable energy. I think this is clearly the major concern for our industry. It is not only a problem of high energy intensive users, but it trickles down the supply chain. So definitely we know, and we have made a study as Business Europe on the cost of energy. We will be more expensive than US and China, but we can reduce the difference, because the difference right now is incredibly high. I mean, we have 2 to 3 times higher electricity prices in Europe than we have in US, and natural gas is even higher. The difference is about 4 to 5 times higher in Europe than it is in US. So we need to reduce this gap, and this we need to do by scaling up renewable, by broadening the list of industries at a risk of investment leakage, by exempting industrial consumers from rising energy infrastructure costs. These are some of the measures we have put forward to the Commission. Then the second aspect where we definitely need to work, and this is going to be very much the task of Commissioner Dombrovskis, and that is simplified regulation. I mean, we have, of course, seen numerous pieces of legislation to implement the Green Deal and also to create a digital single market in Europe. A lot of the work is done to put the base legislation, but we know we will have a lot of implementing and delegated acts coming up. So the amount of legislation and implementing legislation that will come in the next years is something we are also very concerned about. So we are concerned about what is there already, but even more about what is coming. And of course, what is coming can be a way of improving what we have already. What we want to see is more streamlining, reducing of reporting, making sure that what you're asking in one piece of legislation is not repeated on another piece of legislation. Sometimes we are asking similar information twice. We have a lot of micromanagement. A lot of this legislation is requiring so many conditions for companies, is almost like intervening in the way companies are managed, and this doesn't work. So we need really to work on this, and of course we'll be very happy to, and we know we have been working a lot with Commissioner Dombrovskis in the past on trade, and now I'm sure we're going to work as well on simplifying regulations. The third aspect is speeding up permitting procedures. I think here as well, we need to speed up without putting in jeopardy, of course, the sustainability requirements that we needed to, and we have in Europe. This is important, but the process takes long, and this is not good if we need to make investments, especially to implement the green transition. The fourth aspect, and that's where I see even more important role for Turkey, is of course on an ambitious trade policy. I mean, we and the general geopolitical context is making a compelling case for Europe to diversify. We have 30% of our trade with US and China. For different reasons, we have risks right now. In the case of the US, the risks of tariffs. In the case of China, the risk of increasing politicization and security concerns that will impact the trade with China and the investment in China. So we definitely need new markets. I mean, this is why, we have been saying that we need more trade agreements. This could be a crunch week for EU-Mercosur agreement. We are really in desperate need of this agreement because it's a huge market of 700 million consumers that can be created if this agreement is concluded. And this is really an alternative for EU diversification. But that's where Turkey comes in. I mean, Turkey is already a very important partner for the EU. We have a customs union. Turkey is in the process of accession to the EU. But the customs union we have is very old. So actually, Turkey is losing ground as compared to other trading partners. We have been negotiating new agreements. We have been updating some of the old agreements, like Chile. And in the meantime, if we don't do anything with the customs union, this will become less and less up to date. And it's not up to date because it doesn't include services, it doesn't include agriculture, it doesn't include procurement, it doesn't include many of the sustainability and digital provisions that we are introducing now in our trade agreements. So it's definitely a suboptimal situation. And this is not good either for Europe or for Turkey. Now, this is why we think it is a priority to modernize it. It's also a priority because our companies on both sides have a lot of problems with implementation. These problems have been piling up. They are not solved because we don't have a dispute settlement that is effective. And of course, this is creating a lot of frustration. It's creating frustration on the European side. It's creating frustration on the Turkish side. So I think this is the moment. This is now also because in the current geopolitical context, with so many conflicts in our neighborhood, it is in the interest of EU and Turkey that we build a stronger security alliance, that we build closer relationships also here. Turkey is a member of NATO, and I think it is important that we explore these opportunities right now also, and I totally agree with Minister Bozay, and that we need to explore connectivity possibilities that we have. We have Global Gateway. I mean, we think that this is also an area where we need to do more with Turkey. So the opportunity is there, business is ready, we just need political will to move things forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Riza. It's very lucid and very clear. And also it is really in line with some people outside Europe, across the ocean, across the other ocean, who are sometimes trying to portray the European Union as good but old and victim of hostage of the bureaucracy and also lack of action accordingly with the changing global scene. So, Pim Lescrauwaet, you were about to talk about all this, I think, in the first round. Now we have less time, so let's go over a little bit on the global challenges of the competitiveness of Europe and what we can do to make sure that we are at least trying to have a common vision of the near future with some action points.
Okay, thanks a lot. Also, thanks for the very highly interesting interventions by the other speakers. Indeed, what I still wanted to say was a bit in this area, and also speak a bit about what I think the others have done, it also about Turkey, which is of course relevant for this panel and this discussion. So I think the first thing to say on the global, let's say, developments, we look both, of course, at different parts of the world. We look globally, we look at our main trading partners, which is of course the US, and then also we look at other big blocks of the world, China. And for instance, in the US, of course, we have seen these developments recently, the election of a new president. And there, I think our, let's say, way of approaching this is to start from the baseline that we have these very strong ties, these historical ties, extremely deep trade ties. We are major commercial partners, we are major investment partners, so we work also together on a wide range of other issues and we share a lot of value. So I think this goes beyond, of course, any potential election or the consequences of that. And we will, of course, let's say, work as closely as possible together on fostering this open trade agenda. At the same time, of course, promoting our own policy goals and values. They are often aligned. They may not always be aligned. And of course, where they're not, we will continue to, let's say, work in the interest of our European values, policy priorities. So it's a bit early to say at this stage how this will pan out, given, I mean, there have been a number of statements, there are a number of orientations where, of course, everybody is in close touch with the incoming administration, but how this will play out, I think let's say the overall approach is to, let's say, be ready and be constructive and then react as needed. With China, of course, we have a complex relationship where this was basically one of the, let's say, areas where we base our economic security strategy on to reduce dependencies, not decouple, but de-risk, etc. So this, I think, remains the case. And what is, let's say, also clear is that we globally want to partner as much as we can with countries that share our values, that, let's say, are mutually benefiting from such trade ties. And that's why we are indeed also continuing to push for trade agreements with Mercosur where possible to stay this open economy, and also to the benefit of Europe, its security, its prosperity, and also globally, let's say, have this shared value approach so that we can also be globally strong on this more complex global stage. So that is, I think, the overall approach, which I think is well known. How does this then, let's say, link to Turkey? And I think it has been said, Turkey is, of course, a very close partner of the EU economically, but also in terms of addressing the many more geopolitical and other challenges we have today. So it's very clear that we have reconfirmed our strategic interest in the development of a beneficial relationship for both sides with Turkey. So that, I think, is very clear. And I think we work together on a wide range of dimensions, strengthening WTO, etc. Bilateral trade has been continuously growing, and it has been mentioned, I think it reached a new record of 206 billion euros in 2023. So I think we have a very good basis in terms of our relationship indeed with the largest trading partner. So that, I think, provides for a good starting point. And that's why it's also important to continue engaging on these kind of things. And indeed, we have this customs union, which exists since a long time, which allow Turkey to have access to this large EU internal market. Turkish companies are highly integrated with European supply chains, etc. And also the EU is a key investor in Turkey. I think we account for, 70% of foreign direct investments in Turkey. So this is huge. So I think we are now at a stage where we need to indeed look how we can further deepen these relationships. And I think there was a good, let's say, event, a good development that we had this first meeting of the high-level dialogue on trade in July, which was then with the executive vice president, now commissioner with a different role. I'm sure this work will continue with Commissioner Šefčovič, but the good thing is that this event gave a political steer to the work to address these remaining bilateral trade issues and allow the discussion on several areas of cooperation that would strengthen the functioning also of this customs union. So it was an important milestone, and I think it was also important that both parties agreed to pursue work through engagement on these various issues, on trade barriers, on, let's say, the cooperation that has a bearing on the customs union, such as the green transition, digital trade and trade defense instruments, business mobility, and the road transport quota. So there's a number of things that I think have been set in motion. And I think it's very important to continue the work, to make progress on that, because in the end, what I think is the key message also from our side is that what happens in terms of the geopolitical changes, the global changes, in terms of economic relationships, is that actually Turkey is and should be in a top position to benefit from its strong competitive position and also benefit from these, let's say, developments related to, for instance, shortening of supply chains, nearshoring. And I think indeed there is now scope for Turkey to, let's say, make even closer ties with the EU, and even, let's say, benefit more from this good starting point. And we're of course very ready to continue working on these things in the coming months and years, albeit it will be less us but more Commissioner Šefčovič. But it's clear that this is a shared priority of this college. So perhaps I leave it here and happy to continue.
Maybe an additional question. The Trump administration, Donald Trump's presidency, has 4 main goals on the economic and financial side. And the first is that the growth rate of the American economy should be 3%, so higher and more stable. Then the second one is to reduce the budget deficit from 7 to 3%, if I remember well. And the third one is a significant reduction in the trade deficit. And the last one is the rise of the stock market in indices. So there is a critical point here. It seems to be that these 4 goals cannot be achieved by rising tariffs to the rest of the world. They can only be achieved by weakening the US dollar. Even the designated US Secretary of Treasury, Bessett, he was a fund manager until recently. This is what he was also saying. That was his idea. So all these new equations on the horizon with tariffs, US dollars, fall in the international trade, BRICS, and probably more India-friendly policy of Washington now with the upcoming administration, to the detriment of China. And the strengthening, enhancing of Europe's neighborhood and accession countries' geography in a larger European economy and of security. Are we really lost? Can we find a way out?
The tariffs. Okay, no, thanks for this. I think that's exactly what we are now trying to do with this engagement, because it's a bit, let's say, a long-standing mantra from the president-elect that this is something that he would, let's say, want to achieve. And I think the tariffs is not perhaps the goal in itself, but it's a bit the means that they see as a way to protect US jobs, make America great again, preserve jobs, etc. I think it was a bit of a, let's say, easy, simple way to make the point that we should be doing things more at home and therefore create jobs and the prosperity of all. But it's true, you're right, that in terms of, if you look a little bit deeper in terms of economic rationale, it is very clear that it is both harmful for the world, but first and foremost also for the US itself, especially if you have tariffs across the board on many, let's say, areas and for many countries. So that, I think, is one of the things we want to, let's say, try to see whether we can indeed instill a bit of more rationalism in the thinking. And I think a few signals point into the direction that it's not entirely hopeless, that we may have, let's say, some, understanding, because there are a number of people now around this new administration who give noises, or let's say provide points of view that are a bit, let's say, inconsistent, or give hope that there may be some scope to discuss this and see how we can improve the situation from the initial statements. Because it is true that if the US were to put, let's say, major tariffs on a wide range of goods, this would raise inflation. This would, let's say, to the detriment of companies' profitability. There would be, let's say, reactions across the globe that would reduce certainty, reduce or deteriorate the investment climate in the US, etc. So there, and then with an impact on the stock market, obviously. So all this indeed is fully right. Whether there will be only rational decisions, that's what we of course need to see, and that's also why we are not, let's say, preempting anything right now by being on the offensive on all these kind of more protectionist measures from the EU side, because the rational thing globally is not to do that. Of course, we will be able to react, etc., proportionate, targeted, and whatever you have these buzzwords, because the cost, of course, will be also for us in that case. So I think the main work at this stage is to try to talk to them, to understand what their underlying motivations are, and see whether we can find a way that is, let's say, the least damaging, or even potentially building on the strong relation that we have.
Well, thank you very much. Just a remark for the participants, there is a Q&A open on the bottom, so please, if you have any questions. Luisa, so you already went through very well, of course, the global scene, but more specifically, what are we going to do with US and with China? Is there a G2 problem for Europe?
Well, this G2 problem is not new. We have it since some time. I think now it's becoming more and more difficult to sustain a balanced relationship with the two. It feels very much that we are a ball in the middle of a football field with the US on one side and China on the other. Now, I think I totally agree. We should not overreact to what is coming out in the press or to statements from President-elect Donald Trump and some of these people around him. But I think we need to be very clear. He has been consistent in one thing, and that's tariffs. So I think he perceives this as a tool to put leverage, to gain also other things, not only necessarily economic, but also in other fields. So this is new. This is something that we didn't see in the past. So we see he seems to be even more considering tariffs as a way to obtain what he wants in other areas. And I think this will be a problem for us, not just for the EU, but for many countries, because of course, how are you going to react if the US tells you, I don't like this piece of legislation, you need to change it, otherwise I'm going to introduce tariffs. And this is something we should be prepared for, because it could happen. One thing is that we're also very conscious that we have the biggest economic relationship in the world, the EU and US. Our trade is basically the result of the investments that we have, because of course we have investments of European companies in US and investments of US companies in Europe. So our economies are very much integrated, and the trade is not really, it's very much intra-corporate trade. So this is important, and we need to say and we explain this to the new administration. On the other hand, we represent 19% of the imports of the US, the European Union. So we are the biggest of their suppliers. So of course we're going to be in the target. If it doesn't understand that this trade is due to the investments that we have in US, it's going to be difficult for us to demotivate any action, at least in the beginning. So it's going to be challenging. And it's going to be challenging, in particular, to keep a united front. And I think this is going to be the main challenge for Europe, is that we speak with one voice with US. And this is the same challenge we have with China, as we see now in the electric vehicles, because also China is very keen to divide and rule, to speak to country A and country B, to put pressure with trade defense measures on country A and B. So this is a new reality of economic coercion by governments, but also economic coercion on governments and sometimes on companies. And this is something we need to adjust and we need to prepare. Now, what is the way at the moment? I think we will have at one point to align more with US, because we will be forced to, precisely because many of these US measures on economic security have an extraterritorial impact. But we need to try to do this in a way that does not impact negatively our economic interests. So we need to do this gradually and always trying to defend our interests. And this is going to be the challenge going forward, because of course with the current administration, we had the TTC, we had the structural dialogue that facilitated also this coordination. So I think one of the key priorities that we will have is to ensure that we keep this dialogue somehow, maybe in a different form, but that we maintain, if not at a political level, at least a technical level, ensuring that we keep this dialogue, because this is important also in the relationship with China. And with China, we need to make China understand that we are not simply following the US and what the US tells us to do. That's one thing. The second is that we need to make China understand that the EU is acting to protect its interests when it's using trade defense instruments, because China is not doing the necessary to adapt to the new market reality. China doesn't adapt to the fact that consumption of electric vehicles is not what it was expected, so they need to produce less, and therefore they need to export less overcapacity. So this we need to make them understand, and that if they don't change these policies, it's not going to be only the Europe and the US reacting, it will be other countries. And in the end, China will lose because they will lose market access. So I think we also need to convince the Chinese that while we are acting according with the international rules, others are not, but China should also act according to international rules, not start introducing trade defense measures just for political reasons. Actually, we are going to China this week, so this is definitely some of the message that we are going to pass to the Chinese officials.
Thank you very much, Luisa. I started with France, and let me end it with France. We will have a seminar on Turkey-EU Customs Union in Paris on Friday. There is already a very huge number of participants from business, from the politics. President Macron's chief advisor for Europe will be one of the keynote speakers. And one topic which is unavoidable in France is also to talk about the European Political Community Initiative, which is not yet, well, it's almost an empty shell so far. There are lots of ideas, but not yet concrete action lines. So maybe very briefly for both of you, starting with Pim Lescrauwaet, is it a tool in all this geography of competitiveness?
No, thank you. I think it is. I think it is something that is relatively new, and therefore it's still shaping up, of course. So it is a starting point of something. It is also something that indeed may not have been so important 10 years, 15 years ago. But in the current situation with this more fragmentation, I think to have a system whereby you have, I mean, how would I say it, to have different layers of binding countries to the European project, I think is useful, because you have different timelines for accession. You have, let's say, countries around that are not acceding. You have different, let's say, levels of countries that are around us with different statuses, but that in a way where it is useful for them to work together on a number of strategic issues related to Europe's standing in the world, be it security, be it indeed competitiveness. So I think it is for sure shaping up as a tool that can be useful also going forward and being strengthened in the future to develop common, let's say, actions, priority, let's say, policy orientations that are in the interest of Europe and its wider neighborhood. So I think it is still in the early stages, but what I have seen from recent meetings is that it's going in the right direction, so that it is not a pure, let's say, a ceremonial talk show, but that there are a number of things that can, let's say, develop into common, let's say, at least orientations for policy. So I think we need to give it a bit of time, and I think over the coming months and years, it can certainly also contribute to the economic, let's say, competitiveness debate, economic security debate, to make basically a contribution to the stronger Europe in the world. Because if people or if others see that it's not only the EU, but also its surrounding, let's say, neighbors that share positions or share the same values on a number of topics, I think it will help to also gather, let's say, standing and ensure that we can also weigh more in the global stage. So I think this is something that is still developing, but I think we should all support it in a way. It's a good development.
Thank you. Luisa?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think in the current situation, we need to build alliances. We need friends. We need to pass the message. I think we have, and especially with the war in Ukraine, we have not managed to convince many in the world that what we are doing and the support, the very important support to Ukraine and against Russian aggression is not understood in many regions in the world. And I think we need first to convince the ones that are our neighbors and the ones that are part of Europe. And even this is sometimes not so easy. So I think this is important in terms of the political context, the priorities, also in view of the increasing conflicts within our neighborhood, that the stance that the EU is taking is not just the EU, but it has a common agreement by many other actors. And of course, on this, Turkey plays a critical role, but also the UK. The UK is the third trading partner of the EU, and it's very important as well in terms of security and defense for Europe. And we're also looking to reset a bit the relationship. So I think if this can be, an important tool to align positions on security and defense, but also in a wider economic aspect of, more connectivity, energy security, access to critical minerals, I think that is important for our shared security, because I think we share more or less a space. We also share a space where we have a lot of conflicts right now. And I think we need to be stronger by being together and trying ourselves to sometimes manage some of these conflicts. And this is not always easy, but I think it is important that we do that. And that we try to use this also to build a stronger economic relationship. My final point is sometimes we are in Europe too obsessed by the US and China, and we tend to forget about the rest. So I think we definitely are in a moment where we need to build coalitions with the others, because this is also important to make sure that we are more resilient, both from a defense and security point of view, but also from an economic point of view.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very insightful and fruitful exchange of views. We are always at the crossroads of something during the course of history, but I think we are really at the crossroads of something this time, subjectively, of course. So thank you very much, and we are looking forward to continuing this debate, this discussion with you all. And for the last words and remarks and conclusions, the floor is Can Yücaoğlu's. Please.
Thank you very much, dear panelists, for this fruitful discussion. We see that geopolitical realities are bringing us back, pushing us back together, but we are losing a lot of time during that. And what happens when we lose time cannot be explained better than what happened when we compare the GDP of the US with the EU in 2008. Which was basically around the same level. And in 2024, the US had sprung ahead by 50%. So the longer we wait and don't engage, the longer we don't increase our economic cooperation, the less resilient, the less affluent, and the less secure we remain. So I'd like to call our friends in Brussels, and I know Business Europe is always supportive to this message. We don't need to look answers at answers very far. European competitiveness lies in increased integration with its economic partners, with its neighbors. And the current geopolitical realities show us what the limitations of those realities are. and where the opportunity lies. We should start the modernization of the customs union process without any further loss of time. Thank you very much. And we're going to continue to push this agenda in Brussels with our friends and at the European capitals. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the end of this webinar. A merry end of year to all of you, and looking forward to seeing you very soon again. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Bahadır. Thanks, Pim. Bye. Thanks,
a lot.
Jan. Thank you.
Bye-bye.